Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of the SATO Briefing series. Today, we're going to be talking about the PBY Catalina project. And maybe I'll go over a few other things a little bit later on just some brief stuff that's changed in 2024, Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. But primarily, my focus right now is on P3D again. With me coming back to P3D, I started working on the PBY Catalina. So there's been different variations of the Catalina over the years for Flight Sim, all the way back to FS9. I mean, we've got this particular one that I'm working on is based off the old Alpha Sim version, but we have ones from obviously Alpha Sim, Vert Aerosoft is probably the most notably well done one, but it's obviously payware. Um, so I took the old Alpha Sim one that was released as freeware, and I decided to sort of liven it up a little bit and update it. I also have some updated bits from the interior from Buffalo Airways Virtual, who also operated the PBY in their VA for a while. Um, so there's some DNA influence to bring this thing to a more modern existence in P3D. So with my typical updates to things, I update flight dynamics and the visuals, and add any extra features or things like that that might have been missing in the original aircraft, and in particular the firefighting versions, anything that made it special for firefighting. So in the case of the PBYs, there's several different exterior variations of the Catalina. I mean, from varying different types of noses to different types of windows configurations and things like that. Um, the firefighting versions are not any different in that sense, where there's dozens, probably different small variations of them that as they operated as air tankers for however many years. But one of the biggest differences is the difference between the standard Catalina that's equipped with the R1830 engines and the Super Catalina, which was a special version of the Catalina that was modified by Stuart Davis. Anyone who's familiar with Stuart Davis, if anyone is familiar with my C119 project or the C119 air tankers in particular, with the addition of the jetpack on the back of them, this same company did similar performance modifications to not only like I said, the C119 and the PBY, but several other airplanes. But basically, the Super Catalina, like it's represented here, they had two different versions of the Catalina. So they had the PBY 5 and the PBY 6. The PBY 5, the biggest way you could tell the difference between a 5 and a 6 was the tail. The 5 had the typical kind of, I guess, short tail. Um, and with that, on the Super Catalina, on that particular version, which you see here, the tail is notably different. And Stuart Davis, when they added the more powerful R2600 engines from the B25 Mitchell to them, the added torque would easily overpower the rudder control, rudder authority in the PBY. So they had to install a larger tail, uh, which they did. They modified the tails on the PBY 5s that were equipped with these engines to fix that issue, along with other aerodynamic changes to them that were also done, including the removal of the big uh, nose gun emplacement in the front of the PBY, which also helped increase its aerodynamic efficiency and stuff like that. So obviously, a lot of the civilian aircraft or operators that had the PBYs didn't need that, and the added efficiency for the aerodynamic changes and the overall lightening of the Super Catalina um, yielded a significantly better performance. So everyone knows the PBY is not known for being an incredibly fast airplane, and with this particular modification for the Super Cats, the top speed wasn't really affected a whole lot. I mean, it was from what all the things that I've read. There's not a lot of documented information about the Super Catalina, but with a lot of these engine replacements, a lot of the things you notice isn't necessarily the top speed that you got from the added horsepower in this case. Um, it was the climb performance, which as an air tanker is pretty important, especially hot environments, and you're a lot of times in harsh terrain and elevated terrain on top of that. So I kind of tried to, with the flight dynamics of this, try to represent that same type of performance gain you would get. So you couple that with the added aerodynamic efficiency and the extra 1,000 horsepower that the pair of the 2600s adds over the 1830s. You'll get, I think, with my testing right now, because I've already modified the base PBY to fly closer to the real one than the Alpha Sim one was. The Alpha Sim version didn't fly stock. It didn't fly quite as accurately as it should have. So I did have to change that, but then the Super Cats will be even further modification from that as well. So they'll be slightly faster, more powerful to represent the R2600 equips with equipped versions. So uh, this particular version you see here in front of me is one that was flown by Slavko. Um, there's going to be not a whole lot of extra models that I have lined up for these. Each model will probably have a couple of paints to go along with it, but that's basically kind of it. I'm not going to try and make a huge pack out of this. There's already kind of a lot of modifications that are going into just updating these to make them more modern, quote unquote. So along with me making the tail modifications for the PBY 5, I've also modified the engines to represent the R2600s over the R1830s. I've also added things, if I can kind of zoom in a little bit on this, you can kind of see. I've added the drop doors to the belly of the PBY. They've got two doors on either side of the airplane. Um, the some of the most of the stock animations are retained in this, so things like the wing floats, as you see here, those are all still animated properly. Cow flaps, all that type of stuff still works as they did stock. I'm just kind of, like I said, updating the visuals and bringing it kind of back to a modern standard to where it takes advantage of a lot of the things you can get in P3D. So with the pack, you're going to get the PBY 5 and PBY 6, the standard engine versions, with a couple of exterior variations associated with that. And then you'll get two versions each, I think, right now of the Super Catalina. So you'll have two versions of this version, the 5, you see here, and then you'll have two versions of the 6. And I'll bring up the 6 so you can see it in comparison to the 5. So here is a version that represents the PBY 6. And one of the major things that you'll notice between, like I was saying, the 5 and the 6 was the tail. Notice that the 6's tail, if you can kind of see it in this image, the the tail is taller, and this was a stock difference that was done by Consolidated with the later versions of the Catalina. The engine stayed the same on the standard Catalina, but the tail was taller. It yielded better performance on the ground as well as on the water. So it gave it a little bit better, I guess, maneuverability while on the ground. So when Stuart Davis did the Super Cat modification to the sixes, they basically did the lightning and aerodynamics changes, put the new engines on, but they didn't have to modify the tail. So that's kind of one of the versions we'll get with this is the 6, like I said, and the air tankers that are associated with that. There'll be a couple of operators like Buffalo Airways. This one here is flown by Flying Fireman, I believe it was. There'll be a couple of other ones that were kind of. I'm sure everyone probably recognizes the Slavko paint job as the airplane from Always. Um, there's some other paints that I'm looking at probably doing to associate with. I think what did I say? There's going to be probably 6 paints and 6 models. At least right now, that's what it kind of looks like. Plus or minus, it depends as I get further into the modifications. Because right now I'm focused on the Super Catalinas, their bodies first, and then I have some prototypes for the standard Catalinas started, but they're not finished yet because a lot of the added modifications I did for these Super Cats will carry over to the standard versions with the things like the added tank doors and some of the other aerodynamic or body modifications they did to them. So the bodies themselves for the six or the Super Cats are kind of nearly done. There's other small things that I will be adding to this that are things like antennas and radomes and things like that the modernized PBYs had for aerial firefighting. Because some of them had extra radios and things like that, and they needed the extra antennas and stuff like that added to these. So those will also be added here shortly, and where it's needed, I'll do that on the other standard Catalinas as well. So these right now have a functioning cockpit. Like I said, I think I can't recall offhand if the standard Alpha Sim um, PBY cockpit worked 100% in this or not, or this was all made functional by the guys at Virtual Buffalo Airways, because they, like I said, originally they operated this in their VA for a while. So I am not 100% sure on that. I can go back and check, but regardless, some of that DNA from their upgrades of it over the years of them using it is also present in this, that will be present in this whenever it gets released. So uh, that's kind of all I have laid out for the PBYs. There, like I said, there's a slew of updates, not just cosmetics that I'm also doing to them, like I said, flight dynamics and lighting and all kinds of other stuff. Kind of basically what I've been doing on all the other modifications I've done over the years. These are basically getting them as well. So that's kind of what I have for the P3D side of things. For Microsoft Flight Simulator, there still is not very much in terms of that. Um, I will say that there has been some traction in the community to kind of get some stuff out there that helps expand what we have in terms of firefighting. So if you were following along on the Facebook page at all, or maybe you frequent flightsim.to, somebody released a version of a modification for the stock Asobo AT-802. So for those that don't know, the AT-802 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, it comes with two versions only. It comes with the AT-802 Fireboss, which is the scooper based version that's on floats for firefighting, and then just the agricultural version with the spray nozzles and the standard landing gear configuration. They did not have a wheeled firefighting version. This person, uh, they created a wheeled version of the firefighting version, and it looks great. It functions just great. Since it's based off the stock airplane, all of the paints for it work for it. So basically, you just add the modification to your sim, and you have a third configuration you can fly now with the AT-802. So that's nice. So we get a land-based, retardant-based air tanker for once in the sim that's usable. Because other than that, we just have the 747. And that also brings me to the CL415, and I am trying my hardest to get the word out to people and to respond to the Microsoft official forums to get the performance for the CL415 fixed, because as I've come to find out, and maybe some people are aware of it too, but the performance issues for the CL415, it's severely underperforming, and that problem with it was apparently presented to on the forums as a bug when the sim first launched in November of 2024. And Microsoft and Asobo haven't even acknowledged it, and it's been almost a year at this point, which is kind of ridiculous. And part of that, I think, is to blame on two things. One, the firefighting niche in this sim is so small that their vote-based system that they use to address bugs, it can't get high enough on the list compared to other bugs and more commonly used niches, which throws kind of everybody who's in this firefighting niche kind of in the back burner. It's like, oh well, we'll get to it when we get to it, sort of situation. But the thing is that there's so many other minor bugs I feel that are being addressed as opposed to the 415 that's flown like garbage essentially since the sim came out. Meanwhile, you've got people talking about, oh, we need more animals in the sim, or things like that. Bugs and things like that are being addressed by the team at Microsoft before stuff like this performance that basically make the airplane almost unusable in its actual representation of the mission type it's supposed to fly. So the 415 is so underpowered. By my calculations, it's about 42% underperforming its natural climb rate that it's supposed to have while it's loaded. So it's also slower than it's supposed to be too. So in that sense, in anybody who's flown it in career mode, you get engine damage almost immediately whenever you're trying to scoop and take off with a full load of water. You have to either jettison most of your water to avoid engine damage or be able to safely climb out of areas that are near mountains or anything like that. You can't really fly around effectively in it either when it's fully loaded full of water. So um, that's just one of those things that I'm trying to get the word out to try and post and vote up on the forums to get this fixed because, like I said, for us in the aerial firefighting part of the sim right now, we've got the AT-802, and now we've got the fixed gear version. Luckily now, but we've got those two airplanes, the CL-415 and the giant 747. That's it. And the 747, obviously, like most people know, it's kind of pretty unwieldy to use and fly around effectively. Um, but like things like the AT-802 are a little bit more fun to do because they're smaller. You can get into a lot of places with them, and the 415s like a bigger step up from that. But that's kind of all we've got, and here we've got 50% of what we have doesn't fly right at all, and it makes it so it's not enjoyable, especially for anybody who is probably familiar with the 415. They're probably extremely frustrated with the performance, and not only the performance, but all the other stuff that's missing in it. Like, I guess there's autopilot features and other things that are missing in the airplane that aren't even present in it. And from what I've been able to scan on the forums, in the Microsoft forums, in Sim Update 3, it still doesn't sound like, at least that I've been able to see, that they've addressed any of this stuff. And even in the bug report forums, Microsoft still hasn't tagged that the underperformance section at all as being even looked at or acknowledged that it's a problem. So, and it's an uphill process. And in terms of other stuff that's out there for firefighting, I'm not aware of anything that's new that's come out. Um, I think was it the Milviz? Not Milviz. They're not Milviz anymore. Blackbird and whomever they just or Miltech or somebody, whoever released the MH60 recently. That is a big deal because there's a possibility with their mission-based system, and it's similar to high performance with their firefighting setup and rescue setup. They've kind of done something similar with the MH60 for anti-shipping warfare and rescue missions and things like that. It brings a pretty good point that somebody brought up that maybe this could be done since Microsoft and the Asobo aren't doing anything for firefighting. It might be where these mission-based add-ons that are associated with the airplanes and helicopters that are added to the sim themselves are going to be our only way to do these types of missions effectively because the base stuff in the sim just isn't being updated fast enough, and what is there is, it's pretty lackluster in performance. So that at least there's some promise in possibly that being expanded to it. I heard there's some people that are trying to talk to them to try and do other stuff for firefighting expansion models for the Blackhawk. Whether or not that happens or not, I have no idea. But it is. I have talked to a couple people that are trying to see if they can get things like the Firehawk and some of these other tanked and Bambi bucket versions of the Blackhawks, uh, kind of as an expansion to them, as either a paid expansion or some other way. But they are looking at trying to do that too. So that would be kind of cool if they are able to add that, functionality and an extra mission set for the Blackhawk. Because from what I've seen so far, the Blackhawk is very well done. from all the reviewers and people that I've seen fly it in the sim so far. So there is some, like I said, some positives, but really, I think since the last time I updated from this video, there's really, again, not been a whole lot in regards to it done. So that's unfortunate, but maybe as we keep moving further along, that'll change. We'll see, and I keep trying to stay positive in that regard, but it's getting harder and harder to do because we've sat here for, like I said, almost a year, and there's been no changes, no fixes, no expansions, nothing. So, uh, so yeah, and that's kind of where we are with 2024 right now. I have no other word on the S2 either, because again, Microsoft hasn't done much to do anything with their SDK, and it kind of leaves trying to get the work done on that impossible because they're not doing anything, so we can't do anything. Uh, and so it's frustrating in that sense, but that's why I've gone back to doing stuff for P3D because at least P3D is still stable, it works, and there's still a decent number of people still using it. So that's why I've gotten